A lot of times, people will come up to me, because I'm a pastor, and they ask, hey, where does Jesus call himself God? Where is that? And in John, it's these 7 I am statements. And a lot of times that's not good enough. They're like, whatever, Jesus saying I am. That's not what over there. Well, my whole job in this sermon series is to show you that's exactly what Jesus is doing. That's exactly what he's doing there. That he is pointing out that when he's saying, I am the bread of life, or I am the light of the world, that he's saying something deeper there. And today's is super exciting. Today is super exciting. So you guys all know I write my sermons with my friend Mark. When we discovered this a couple years ago, this light of the world one, it ended up changing the trajectory of our preaching probably forever. And I hope, I'm setting up a high bar, I hope that I can communicate that with you today. I hope that I can communicate what's going on in there. So remember from last week it's the Bush saying, hey, my name is I am, right? And then last week we learned about Jesus saying, I'm the bread of life. And what the whole idea behind that one is, it says, stop grumbling for bread. Stop looking for signs. Stop looking for all this stuff. Realize that it is God that is providing everything that you need. And today is Jesus saying in John chapter 8, he says, and again Jesus spoke to them, he says, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. All right, we need to establish some ground rules real quick, all right, because this is the quintessential Chris Escher sermon, all right? And you're asking, what does that mean? Like plucky jokes and like Bible stuff? Yeah, kind of. But what it is that it's huge swaths of scripture that get used. The main idea about Jesus being the light of the world, you will not be able to see it in its entirety unless you read chapter 7, 8, and 9 of John. So you're welcome to pull out your Bibles, got to follow along, but we're kind of going to be moving around. But I would like your homework to be this week, all right? You guys remember homework? All right, good. Your homework to read 7, 8, and 9 of John, to read those chapters and see what we're talking about here. See what's happening. See that this is all surrounding 8:12 there, where Jesus says, I am the light of the world. And he says that you guys will all have light in life. And I think this is an idea for Christians that it's pretty easy for us to grasp, that his light in life and salvation, that it's just the light overcomes the darkness and all that stuff. And I think the easy thing that we could talk about with that would be sea turtles. You guys like sea turtles? They're super cute when they're little, right? They're kind of big, 200-pound beasts when they're big, though, right? Like sea turtles. And so we live kind of in a beachy community around here. What happens when it's time for the sea turtle eggs to hatch? What happens on the beach, especially? The lights, right? Now, why do the lights have to go off? Because they'll go to the light, right? You can't have the false light of your condo. You can't have the false light of Shuckers, right? And what even happens to the Jensen Beach stores? Like all their parking lot lights are dim. I remember when Coley and I first moved here, we were walking out of Target over there in Jensen Beach, right? And we're like, we can't see the car. Why is it so dark over here, right? Like they turn it off so that the turtles, the little baby turtles, won't go to the false light. Like I read a report that it's an estimated 61,000 baby turtles will go the wrong way because of light. This year. Isn't that an astounding number? So if you're on the beach, close your windows, right? Like close your windows. Like let's let the little turtles at least have a chance in the ocean, right? So it's over there. And so it's like we have this idea of following after the true light. And that's a good example. And you're like, what light are they following? The moon and the reflection on the water. Okay? And they follow that into the water. And that's a good idea of following after the light. But there's something better. There's something better. And I hope I can paint this picture for you and what's going on, because it's so much better than being on Daytona Beach or Jensen Beach or something like that and saving the sea turtles. Because what is actually going on here is that there's a festival called the Festival of Booths. You guys celebrate booths, right? Festival of the Tabernacles. It's a tent. It's a festival of tents. 1 second. Man, this is going to be tough to preach for 45 minutes if my voice is going out. Exactly. You got the joke. Let's see. No one mind that I put that there. That's not sacrilege. All right. So he I've been sick all week, by the way. So there's this festival of tents, of booths. So at the beginning of chapter 7, we begin to see this. So after this, which was what we went over last week, by the way, Jesus talking about the bread and feeding of 5,000. After this, Jesus went around in Galilee, and he did not want to go into Judea because the Jewish leaders were there looking for a way to kill him. Why do the Jewish leaders want to kill him? Because he's calling himself I am. You know, he's calling himself God. But when the Jewish festival of tabernacles, of booths, was here, Jesus' brother said to him, leave Galilee and go to Judea. Like, it doesn't matter what his brother said to him. But when the festival of tabernacles was near, now, as soon as you hear tabernacles or tents or something like that, your bells should be going off in your head. Bells should be going off. Why would bells be going off in your head? Does anyone know? God's presence? Yeah. So the reason why they celebrated this festival of the booths is that after God took them out of Egypt and they wandered around in the wilderness, they lived in tents that whole time. And so now they have this festival of booths. So basically, here we go. Let's build some tents as they're coming out of the Red Sea, right? So as they're wandering out in the wilderness, they build these tents, and God's presence itself is in a tent, the tabernacle, and which is like a temporary temple. And his presence is in there, and they're wandering all through the wilderness. And now, in Jesus' day, they have this festival of booths, which is the festival of tabernacles. And here's how they celebrate it. It's an 8-day-long celebration. I think it's funny that they're like, oh yeah, we've got Easter, or we've got Christmas, or the 4th of July. It's like one day, right? Like they celebrated for 8 days, right? That 8 days, good luck getting off your job for that, right? Like that's like, well, we'll give you the 5th day on that. But they would come, and everyone from around Israel would come to Jerusalem to celebrate this huge festival, and they would all live in booths. They would all live in these booths to remind themselves of how God saved their ancestors from Egypt, and he saved them, and he was with them as they wandered around in the wilderness. But do you know what else they did? See, part of that story about them wandering around in the wilderness is that the tabernacle was built, and at night, a pillar of fire, a pillar of light would lead them through the wilderness. A pillar of light would lead them, and wherever the pillar would stop, they would stop. And wherever it went, they would follow it. And so to celebrate this fact, they would all bring lights, lanterns with them to Jerusalem to light them off. Something like this, right? They would all bring this, and then in Jerusalem proper, they had these huge lampstands, 75 feet tall lampstands. They had 16 of them. I think 16 of them is right. 16 lanterns that they would light. They would be like this big around, right? Filled with oil, and they would light each one of these. And you could see the light coming from Jerusalem from all around the surrounding area. And then all these other people had these little or smaller lamps. Can you imagine what that would look like? And they were reminded of how God led them through the wilderness. How he led them by his will and by his light all the way up to the end of Exodus. In Exodus chapter 40, verse 38, it says, "For the cloud of the Lord was on the tabernacle by day and fire by night, in the sight of the house of Israel through all of his journeys." And this is what they're celebrating in the temple of courts. That they see that God is the one that brings light and salvation to their ancestors, and it brings light and salvation to them, and they're still celebrating it. And Jesus comes in, standing below and in all of these different lights. He's standing in and around them, how they're remembering how the great I am, the caller of Moses, saved them and their ancestors and set them apart. Jesus is standing in the midst of all of that, and he goes, "I'm the light of the world." You hear it now? Who is he connecting himself to? He's not just saying some metaphorical, just follow me, and it'll be all right. No, he's going, "I am the light of the world." That he's saying that this is what he's come to do. That he is here. He is the one that rescued those people from Exodus. He is the one that saved them and led them through the wilderness. He is the one whose presence went into the tabernacle. That he is that one. That he is the I am. That he is that light. That's cool. That's cool. Excuse me. So what does that mean for us? I think we still struggle with darkness to this day. Yeah, and I think a lot of times we look at the effects of the darkness all around us and we just don't know how to cope. Right? We don't know. We understand the own darkness in ourselves when we lash out at people. Maybe we lash out at our kids. We lash out at our neighbors, and we're just like, I just don't know how to get. I see the darkness that resides inside of me. We look at the darkness and we see the darkness of cancer that plagues the loved ones, that may even plagued our own body, and we say things like, "Where is God? Where is this life and salvation that I hear so much about?" We see the darkness of our own sin. We see it everywhere, and it seems all too big. And it seems like it's coming from the people around us, and it comes from ourselves. And so we come up with all kinds of rash things saying, we need to fix this darkness. You need to get into line, right? We need to fix this darkness. You need to do this correctly. That's what the Pharisees were teaching at the time. They're like, God will come and save us again if you guys will just get your act together. Like it's over there. And Jesus is like, no, I am the light of the world. And this is where the story becomes beautiful. You got to get to chapter 7. Chapter 9. So chapter 7 is they're describing what's going on in this festival of the tabernacles. Chapter 8 is where Jesus says, I am the light of the world, and the Pharisees getting a bit tizzy about it, right? And then chapter 9, there's this story about a man born blind. There's a story about a man who cannot see, that the darkness is palpable. The darkness is thick, right? That he cannot see anything. The darkness is real to him. And Jesus comes to this man born blind, and he heals him. Now, what does everyone else do around that guy? All of a sudden, light comes back to the man born blind, right? All of a sudden, light comes back. The light of the world brought physical lightness back to him. Does everyone believe the guy? No, not at all. You guys are probably familiar with this story. The Pharisees and the religious leaders and all that stuff, they're trying to pin him down. And they're like, so you were a sinner. We've been dogging you your whole life. Because they would tell blind people and their families that, it's you've sinned in some way. That's why you were born blind. And it's like, you must have been faking it the whole time. I'm sure his name was Dale. Good Hebrew name. Like, Dale, you've been faking it this whole time. Like, you could see this whole time, haven't you? And he's like, no, I was blind. I could see. And they're like, that's not true. Because we know this Jesus who you're claiming has healed you. We know him. We know him to be speaking heresy. We know that he's a sinner. We know that he's a terrible person. And they're like, who healed you? And he's like, it's just Jesus. And they're like, no, he's a sinner. Sinners don't heal people. And then he says something profound. And he says something very simple. And it's found in John 9, verse 25. He says, whether he's a sinner, I don't know. The one thing I do know is that I was blind, but now I can see. How simple is that? How simple is that? I was blind, but now I see. It's simple and profound. So in the midst of the darkness, Jesus breaks in. He is the light that brings life and salvation. And no darkness can overtake him. He is light. So may our confession be in a simple manner, just like that guy. May our confession be, I was blind, I was in darkness, but now I see. I see what God is doing. I see all around me. May that be your confession too. That Jesus, whether he's a sinner or not, I don't know. That's not for me to decide. But all I know is that once I was in darkness, but now I have the light of salvation. That's good news. Let's say a prayer. Jesus, we thank you.